Okay, this is the first time I've tried to do this. Let's hope that it works. This is at profmcdarby.com. This is my website. If you go down here, there's clicks for laboratory exercises. The key that you use for this lab is in there, but it's also its own button. If you hit the classification key, you get this, which gives you instructions. Basically, what you're going to do is you're going to work your way question by question by question down a classification ladder. And on your answer sheet, you're going to put stuff down as you hit it, including between the lines. If you get super and subgroups that go between the lines, you're going to hit those as well. So I'm going to take you through a demonstration of how this works, where if you were filling out your answer sheet under common name, it would say human. So you always start at the very beginning for anything. You've got your two choices for number one, A and B. Tiny, invisible or barely visible to the naked eye, or large enough for a shape to be seen. In the lab, keep in mind, just because it's under a microscope doesn't mean you can't see it. And so that's an important thing. If we're 1B, I always advise that people write these numbers down as you go and write the number you're going to. I'm going to hit number 4. It takes us down the page to the 3 choices for number 4. Plant-like but not green, this is the funguses for 4A. We're not funguses. Plants are 4B, we're not plants. 4C is us, Kingdom Animalia, and so I'm going to tap that. And before I do that, I'm going to write the kingdom down on the answer sheet. Real easy to forget that, to be working your way through the key and go past a grouping and realize later, oh, this line is blank. Well, it can't be blank. You're working your way down. If you've skipped a line, you missed it. That's why it's a very good idea to be able to back up. Of course, on the computer, you can back up with the backup arrow. This takes us to the page for animals. The first choice is either sponges or how the digestive system is set up. You'll notice on the video for the lab that the cards will say things in parentheses. If something has only one digestive system opening, it will say so on the card in parentheses. So for this, the choice is kind of taken out of your hands. If you don't have a sponge and there's no note on the card, then the mouth and anus are separate openings, which of course in us is what we have. And so I'm going to tap on number 7. That takes us down to the top of the page here. This is the worm choice. Body is long and cylindrical, worm-like. No limbs or side-attaching fins, no scales. That's 7A. 7B is basically the same thing, but with scales. And 7C is everything else. Not as above, or if it's worm-like, it's got limbs or fins. Well, we're not worm-like, so I'm going to hit 10 here, which takes us down the page. Body is laid out in a 5-fold circular pattern. Now, sometimes things will go into parentheses because the term will come up again later. And this is where the term was defined. So pentaradial symmetry, if you were to run into it later, you go, where did that got defined somewhere up above, and you'd have to go back up and find it. Well, we're not laid out like a starfish. 10B and 10C are kind of tricky choices for some of the things in the room. Skin is not rigid, our skin is not rigid, but sometimes there's scales over not rigid skin, there's shells like in, say, snails, under not rigid skin. Hair and feathers can hide it. The muscles are on the outside of the skeleton is an important point. 10C, our body is covered by a rigid or semi-rigid material, a shell or an exoskeleton with the muscles inside. And it tells you it includes things like spiders and insects. Well, we're not rigid, so it's not a tricky question for us, but for some animals it is. I'm going to tap 14. A lot of times with these choices, you don't have to read the whole thing to know what the choice is. 14A is no skeleton inside body. Well, you know that can't be right. 14B, internal skeleton present of cartilage and or bone, usually with a backbone known as a vertebral column. has notochord sometime during its lifetime. This also is what happens sometimes with choices. You'll hit something and go, I don't know what a notochord even is, but it doesn't matter. You've already made your choice based on other stuff it told you. This gives us our phylum, which is Chordata, and that's going to take us to 28. So you got to write your phylum down. You're not writing this stuff down. This is just a demo. Fish-like but flat and small. Okay, you don't need to read any further. 28B, various shapes, which means in the whole group there's a bunch of different shapes, including a bunch there. No backbones. Okay, that can't be us. 28C have backbones and usually skulls. Here the skull is used as what's called a marker trait. It's, with some animals, really tough to look at an animal and know if it's got a backbone. But it's usually fairly easy to look at a head and look for a jawline and look for nostrils and eye sockets and know that there's a skull. And if there's a skull, usually that's attached to a backbone. This gives us our first between the lines group, subphylum Vertebrata. So we haven't hit the next thing on the answer sheet. We're writing in between the lines. And as long as you write in the order that you hit things, you'll be fine. This goes to 29. I'm not going to tap on it right now because it's right there on the screen. Teeth, if there are any, are not in jaws, but embedded in the tissues of the mouth. No scales, no limbs. Okay, this is not us. 29B have jaws, usually have paired limbs or fins. Remember, this is a description for a whole group. This says that in this group, there will be animals that don't have paired limbs or fins. And if everything else fits here, they got jaws, they don't fit the other thing, you pick them anyway. So look for usually and often, as occasionally you see sometimes. And again, we're still between the lines. The next thing on your answer sheet is class. We haven't hit it yet. We've hit superclass. So that gets written down. And then this sends us to 31. Primitive fish for A is not us. Advanced fish for B is not us. Usually live in water and or moist environments. Well, maybe we're an exception and the usually fits us. Have skin which is thin without scales and glandular. That kind of sounds like us, but you always want to look at all your choices. D, found in a wide range of environments. Skin is scaly. Okay, that's not us. E, front limbs or wings. That's not us. F, covered with fur or hair. Young, usually born alive, possess milk glands, warm-blooded. That fits us better than the one we were looking at up above. And that gives us our class. So we finally hit the class line, class Mammalia. This takes us there. Lots of choices for this. Produce the young and eggs, that's not us. Young spent early life in the pouch, usually Australian, that is not us. Sloths and anteaters and such, not us. Front limbs or wings, that's not us. Bodies are rounded to oval, tails with little or no hair, usually 4 toes on the front foot, 5 on the back, no. Similar to 1E, but tails are short and hairy, nope. Totally aquatic, meaning they live in the water, commonly marine, which means they live in oceans or seas. So far, nothing sounds like us. So we scroll. 5 toes on the front foot, 4 or 5 on the rear foot. That could be us. Canine teeth are relatively large, primarily meat eaters. You know, that might be us, but it doesn't sound very good. Look at the rest of the choices. Mostly aquatic with flippers is not us. Totally aquatic is not us. Quite large, nose modified as a trunk. That's not us. Feet have 1 or 3 toes modified as hooves. That's not us. 2 or 4 toes, sometimes modified as hooves. That's not us. Hands are grasping with opposable thumbs, usually with similar feet. Now, we don't have grasping feet, but it says usually, which means we can still be in this group and be an exception. Snout or nose is short, often have good eyesight. Brain is well developed, often have tail. Again, it doesn't say everybody in this group has tails, but they often do. So this sounds pretty good for us. I want to always look at the rest of the choices. Now, you'll notice that these other choices are dead ends. They don't go to new numbers. And whenever you hit a dead end, the very last thing in the description will give you common names. 1O are flying lemurs. Well, that's obviously not us. 1P are pangolins. Nobody knew what the heck these were until somebody thought that the coronavirus had jumped from bats to pangolins to people. But that's not us. 1Q, aardvarks. That's not us. 1R, hyraxes. Okay, it looks like primates up above. N is what's going to fit us. And I'm going to tap on the number here, number 32. It just takes us through the numbers in this group. If it'll read it. Come on. There we go. Second digit of the hind foot is often modified as a grooming claw. Well, it doesn't not true for us, but let's see what else it says. Snout with toughened skin on the nose. Lower front teeth usually form a tooth comb, mostly tree-living, old world only, includes more primitive primates. And then what often happens is it gives you this long description, and then the next choice is not that. So 32B, hindfoot, nose, and teeth, not as in 32A, more advanced. That does fit us better. Again, we're between the lines with a suborder. It takes us to 34. 34 is a lot of dead ends. So I'm going to skip to the end and look at the common names for these. 34A are tarsiers, that's not us. 34B are a whole bunch of different types of monkeys, that's not us. 34C are other kinds of monkeys, that's not us. 34D are marmosets and tamarins, and that's not us. 34E are gibbons and siamangs, that's not us. 34F is the only thing that goes to a new number, so I'm going to read through it. Large and usually stocky. Now, as animals go, we're actually pretty big. There's not a lot of animals bigger than we are. No tail, okay. Black, gray, brown, reddish, or essentially hairless. We're pretty hairless. Forearms are well developed. Well, that's kind of, I guess we need to work out more. Arms are usually longer than legs. Now, our arms and legs are the same length, but the usually gives us a pass there. Stance is upright or close to it. So when we're standing, we're kind of upright. That's right. Face is expressive, usually with a prominent jaw. Nostrils face forward and downward. Vocalization is complex. You're listening to me, aren't you? Make and use nests of various sorts. Houses count. Usually produce single young with long period of parental care. That all describes our group, and it does describe us. So I'm going to scroll up to 35. Whole bunch of dead ends. Chimpanzees. Now, every level of the of classification does get its name, like family and genus and such, except for the species. If you've listened to the chapter, which you should have done to know what the heck we're doing here, you know that species names are always two words. The first word is always the genus. They're always in italics, and the second word is never capitalized. It doesn't mean anything by itself. The species name is those two words together. So chimpanzees are Pan troglodytes, orangutans are Pongo pygmaeus, gorillas are gorilla. You are allowed to use the genus name twice in a species. Usually that's done when somebody goes, well, this is really the representative species in this genus. And then there we are at the end, humans. Genus Homo, species Homo sapiens. This is how you use the key. And when you hit a dead end, you're done with that particular organism. You may hit a dead end at kingdom. You may hit a dead end at family. Wherever you hit a dead end, you are done with that one and you find another one to do. Sometimes it goes all the way down to species. Sometimes it gives you stuff between the lines, but not always. But remember, you're supposed to be doing 8 of these. The answer sheets have 8 spots on them. You're supposed to be doing 2 things that are alive in the lab. As you look through the video, there's a bunch of live stuff in the lab. You're supposed to do 1 of the photographs that are on the video. And then there are links to still images of things under dissecting scopes. You're doing 1 of those. And microscopes, you're doing 1 of those. So that's how the lab works. And I hope this all worked on video because it's the first time I tried to do a screenshot.